Hello, Attorney Joseph. Or maybe he will be joining us later.
Yes.
Next is the Chief of the Mediation Division, also from the Fair Trade Enforcement Bureau, Ms. Werlin Reyes. Good morning, Ms. Werl.
Hi, Thea. Hi, As. Good morning, Thea. Good morning, Asek. Good morning to all the participants.
Good morning.
Good morning and thank you for joining us today. So we have gathered questions from the audience during the registration and we will flash them right now. But should you have other questions, you may still send them via the chat box. So let's start with the first question. Does the DTI rule on refund also apply to other services or suppliers, like for example, hosting, singers, or event stylists? Ask Anne, please.
Well, if it is part of the package, right? Because what we're talking about here is an event. So it is, if it is part of that package where you have to um because from my experience, when you have an event like this, part of the cost will already be the cost of having a host or singers, a stylist. That is part of the event. So if it is part of the event, then the DTI rule on refunds should also apply. Okay.
There's also a follow-up question here from the chat box from Miss Lika Soria. What if the supplier's partial payments already includes um, operating expenses that were not delivered or rendered services yet? Should this be refunded too?
What do you mean by operating expenses? Because if you're saying operating expenses, yun yung sinabi ko kanina, those are the expenses of running a business day to day. So, as I had said, whether the event was going to take place, whether you were able to get that client to hold the debut of a daughter or the wedding in your place, you would still have incurred that expense kasi that is for the day-to-day of the business. Those expenses are not contemplated dito sa ating refund circular. What is contemplated are those expenses that are directly related to the event itself. Kaya ibabawas mo doon sa binayad ng client because it would not be fair if you are going to remove, for instance, salary or electricity from what the client had paid. Eh, 'di ba? Those are expenses of the business and di lang naman, 'di ba? That particular payment should have gone to the holding of that event, 'di ba? So hindi pa pwedeng operating expenses. The way I interpret it as an accountant is when you say operating expenses, it's directly related to generating the revenue. 'Di ba? So ang sinasabi natin ang pwede mo lang ibawas dun sa halagang binayad would be those expenses that are directly related to the event itself.
Thank you, Asik.
Yes.
For the second question, does the MC also cover travel-related bookings, such as hotel accommodation, tour packages, and flight bookings? Yes,
I'll,
please, Asik.
so where are the other panelists? What
Uh,
um my
Attorney,
take on this is hindi kasi kasama yan. This we're talking about an event. Okay, I would say that they are not included in this MC. If you look at the MC, nakalagay doon birthday party, um, reunion, weddings, or conferences, travel-related bookings, hotel accommodations, tour packages, flight bookings. Um, they are not really directly related dun sa party itself. It may be an additional activity, but not directly related to the event itself. Probably, ang naisip ko lang, if there is an exception, maiisip ko lang, there are some resorts na bago ka makarating doon, sila lang yung may eroplano papunta doon. So siguro yung plane fare going there, I could probably would qualify as being part of the event. For instance, may may wedding or probably a bridal shower gagawin sa isang resort na kailangan sumakay ka ng eroplano papunta doon. 'Di ba? Yung binayad mo doon sa events place na yon includes that plane fare because hindi ka naman makarating doon kung hindi gagamitin yung eroplano nila. Now, for me, in that particular case, pwede kong sabihin that directly relates to the event itself. Pero yung sinasabing travel-related bookings, hotel accommodations, tour packages, flight bookings, taken as it is presented here, hindi po siya kasama sa MC. Doon lang sa sinabi ko na sa event, bago ka makarating doon, kasama yung eroplano papunta doon, but only that, okay? Only that aspect is related to that event.
Thank you, Asek. I'd like to acknowledge here the presence of Attorney Marimel Porciuncula, the OIC Director of CPAB. She will be joining us as a panelist in today's discussion. Good morning, Attorney Mel.
Good morning, Asek.
Good morning.
Thea. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, let's move on to the third question. How to go about negotiating the refund of reservation fee for a wedding scheduled in August 2020 onwards, which are likely to be canceled due to the unforeseen or unpredictable feature of the health crisis. Although Asek Ann has already mentioned this in her presentation, we can reiterate it still. Attorney Mel, perhaps you can answer this question.
Yes. So the wedding is scheduled in August. Since like what Asek Ann mentioned early on, that we cannot predict yet when this community quarantine will be lifted. So yung August, pwede pa rin siyang makover if the community quarantine will still not be lifted. So, nakalagay naman under the memorandum circular during the community quarantine. So, kahit JCQ pa siya, it's still a community quarantine or MJCQ pa siya. So, how to go about negotiating? So, we give the parties the opportunity to talk. This is what DTI's intention in issuing this circular. We encourage both parties to discuss their issues kasi wala naman pong hindi madadaan sa mabuting usapan. So they can renegotiate on the terms and conditions of their contract kung meron man silang contract.
Thank you, Attorney Ann. At Attorney Mel. Marami pong questions tungkol dito. Dito po sa chat box natin, may mga events scheduled in December, so they're asking similar questions. So nasagot naman na po ni Attorney Mel yan. We'll move on to the next question. If the supplier stated no refund policy for force majeure or fortuitous event on their contract, should it be strictly followed? If yes, what is the guarantee for the consumers that these companies will not declare bankruptcy should the crisis extend? Miss World, please answer this question po. Si Asik Ana lang po, wala.
Oh, okay. I think I mentioned this earlier, but really just to reiterate, of course, we respect contractual provisions. So kung meron po yung force majeure, may fortuitous event provision there, and it states that no refund in case of a fortuitous event. Should this be strictly followed? According to the law, of course, it has to be strictly followed. Kasi nga yun nga yung law between the contracting parties. When you entered into that contract, hindi ka naman puwersa. Kaya natin nilalagay yung on goodwill because nga sinasabi natin, we are encouraging, DTI encourages that, you know, people also consider yung goodwill. Dahil wala nang may gusto sa atin na mangyayari ito. Now, is there any assurance that these companies will not declare bankruptcy? Even us in DTI cannot assure that. However, if the supplier really wants to continue in the business, kaya kailangan mong tingnan yung goodwill aspect na yan. And of course, ang inaano natin, wag nyo naman din pong pahirapan yung client. Tapos, kasi syempre that money did not just get to you na pinulot lang nila. And I understand why there are so many concerns that are being raised because, of course, money is not easy to come by. Talagang pinag-ipunan yan or baka mamaya nangutang pa. So, hopefully, the act of goodwill is something that is positively considered by the supplier. And unfortunately for us, we cannot guarantee na walang bankruptcy.
Thank you, Asik Ann. May question po dito from K-Miss. What if the contract is not notarized?
Alam nyo, kahit nga hindi nga nakasulat yun, kung nagkasundo kayo, that is a contract. Diba? So, notarization will make it a public document. But even without a notarized agreement, you still have a valid contract between the parties.
Thank you, Asik.
Yes.
Now for the fifth question, do event suppliers have the right to adjust the rates if the event was moved to 2021? Suppliers are willing to reschedule the event without penalties, but some are revising their contracts stating that 2021 rates will be applied. Attorney Mel. Attorney Mel or Ms. Werlin po can answer the question.
I can answer that. I would say that you already have a contract. Napag-usapan nyo na yung rates, di ba? Napag-usapan nyo na yung rates. Kung meron man kayong rate adjustment, i-apply nyo sa future contracts. Apply it prospectively. Huwag nyo namang isama yung nag-usap na kayo because when businesses come out with rates, they factor in contingencies. Diba? That is how you do business. Although I acknowledge that this event is something that is really very, very exceptional. Still, there is that factoring in of risks. So I would say that the rates that you have agreed upon at the start, before the lockdown, before this happened, should be the rates that will apply. for future contracts, doon na lang kayo mag-adjust. Wag naman dito. Because yung client, ayaw din namang mag-postpone, ayaw din namang mag-move, 'di ba? Ayaw mag-scale down. At saka yung napagkasunduan nyo, dapat yun na yung agreement nyo talaga. That is why the MC also provides for the options. 'Di ba? The options available. So, tinatanggal natin as much as we can yung discretion ng parties para they can meet halfway. Parang magkaroon ng meeting ground. Kasi if both parties, mangingiral yung pareho nilang discretion, magkakaroon tayo ng dispute settlement. So, as to the right to adjust the rates, I would say, whatever you agreed upon at the start, because we said, law between the contracting parties na yan, yun yung dapat nyong anuhin, ipapatupad. Okay? Now, even if the event is going to be moved, even the circular recognizes na dun sa you consume the amount, it's within 1 year. So, even if the event is moved to 2021, siguro pwede nyo na lang pag-usapan between the parties na kung sabihin ng supplier, pwede bang ganito na lang kasi nahihirapan din kami. Pero not to just unilaterally adjust their rates.
And ASEC, if I may add,
Yes.
diba, under the MC, we cited Article 19 of the Civil Code. Yung Article 19 na everyone must, in the exercise of his rights and in the performance of his duties, must act with justice, give everyone his due, and observe honesty and good faith. So we should be guided by fairness din po pagka tayo ay gusto nating i-renegotiate yung contract natin. Huwag naman natin yung parang tayo lang yung gustong mapaboran nung provisions ng regulations. So we need to balance din po kasi yung protection nung client and the the business side din. So talagang mahirap din talaga yung role ng DTI. That's why we're issuing memorandum circulars such as this circular. So, thank you,
Okay,
Asek.
let me just add to that, no. Ang tawag ko kasi dyan sa Article 19 ng Civil Code, golden rule yan ng human relations. Ang sinasabi kasi natin dito, it covers natural and juridical persons. So isasama ko na si juridical person. That is what is contemplated in the issuance. It is the golden rule of relations. So yun yung aside from just contractual provisions that we said is law between the parties, yun din yung golden rule na yung sinabi ni Director Mel. So sana yun yung on both sides. I'm not just saying on the part of the supplier or the events place owner. I'm also saying on the part of the client, also be very reasonable with what you would also present para naman pareho kayong happy. Ako lagi kong iniisip on the part of the supplier, you are part of an event, especially for the personal events, of a very, very special milestone in the lives of these people. Let that big experience be a happy one, a pleasant one, even if we are in a pandemic right now. Dapat yun yung makikita nyo. That is the goodwill there.
Thank you, Asek Ann. Thank you, Director Mel. For our next question, since the wedding suppliers are also affected by the pandemic, can they hold off issuing refunds to keep the business afloat? Director Mel? Yes, Asek Ann.
Asek?
Yes, Asek.
Okay. So, sige. Can they hold off issuing refunds? Under the memorandum circular, kasi the clients are given the option whether to opt for refund or for whether to consume their deposits or reservation fees. So, ang tanong lang naman kasi, when you receive those advance payments, nagastos mo ba? Yan lang, di ba? Nagastos mo ba prior to the ECQ or within the ECQ? Kaya nga, babalikan na naman natin, this MC is very fair. Kasi although sinasabi natin pwedeng mag-refund yung client, pero pag may nagastos na yung venue supplier, kailangan ding i-deduct from the refund yung amount na expenses incurred prior to the community quarantine or prior to March 17, 2020. So, yes, ASEC.
March 16 yata, March 16, if we're strict about the
yes,
dates.
it was
Yeah.
issued on the 16th of March, ASEC. Pero the following day yata yung effectivity niya. The following day, kinount.
I think it was effective immediately. We were in XCOM that time. But anyway, ang ano ko dito is, on holding off refunds, I think earlier when we were talking about the options, on the procedure for the refund concessions, there was a 30-day period, right? And it said that if the parties did not agree upon, then it should be within that 30-day period. So there is no stopping the parties to agree on a longer period. So I also encourage the client to recognize the plight of businesses, including these wedding suppliers. So, kaya nga ang inaano natin yung golden rule, hindi lang si client ang apektado. Also, the suppliers are affected. So, in DTI kasi, tinitingnan namin the entire spectrum. Kami sa Consumer Protection Group, of course, consumers. But there is that part of DTI, and we also, that's a very important part of DTI, that also really looks after our businesses, our entrepreneurs, our industries. So that is really the reason why even in this community quarantine, ang sinisikap po ng DTI is to open up the economy slowly, but very mindful of all those protocols, increasing operating capacities, kasi that is the only way that economic activity is going to really to make things as normal as possible. So sana naman both sides can agree, pwede naman ninyong pag-usapan yung longer period of time. So pero yung sinasabi mong holding off refunds, probably what would be more in keeping with the spirit of the MC is, you can probably say, pwede bang ito, tapos instead of 30 days, 60 days, pero ito muna ibibigay ko. Pwede naman yung pagkasunduan because you also have cash flow requirements. So, mag-usap kayong mabuti, but yung talagang holding off lang, medyo pag-usapan nyo the period and your commitment to really also give what is due. And when you give that commitment in business, it is important that you honor that. Otherwise, whether the pandemic is over and the quarantines are lifted, mahirapan ka ding magkaroon ng kliyente.
Thank you, ASEC Ann and Director Mel. For the next question, are the event suppliers required to give a full refund even if they already have incurred expenses during the preparation for wedding, birthday, or event, i.e. food tasting, consultation fees, meetings, purchase or rental of materials? This has been answered by Asek Ann earlier. So just to reiterate po siguro, Asek Ann.
Okay, so as I said earlier, full refund provided you have not incurred, the supplier has not incurred any expense directly related to the event. And that expense must have been incurred before the declaration of the community quarantine.
Thank you, Asek Ann. For our next question, can suppliers insist on the stipulations of the contract, i.e. non-refundable reservation fees, cancellation fees, rescheduling fees, and decline the client's demand for a full or partial refund? Uh, Director Melva.
Again, the default should be we should recognize the terms and conditions if there is an existing contract between the parties. But again, they are not prevented from discussing their issues and exhaust possible means of resolving their issues. So we have no control over either party kung ano yung, di ba? Kung they insist, matigas siya. Yung kabilang party naman, so meron naman siyang remedy. In case na matigas yung kabilang party, merong remedy ang either party, either the aggrieved party or the party insisting. So kung hindi man covered by this memorandum circular, they have their respective remedies under applicable laws such as the civil code. Yeah. So, ASEC. Thank you.
So may nakita lang ako pala, Thea, excuse me, I have to butt in. May nakita lang kasi ako sa chat box na yung hindi parang hindi ina-answer yung calls. So if there are suppliers here, I think it is also important that you are able to show not only the good faith, not only the goodwill, but also that the client has the impression that you're willing to talk, 'di ba? Kasi mahirap yung lalo na dito kasi nakapagbayad nga eh. Nakapagbayad nga. We're not saying that suppliers did not incur expenses. What we're saying is the client has paid, and that's why we have this MC on refund. So nakapagbayad na, naapektuhan dito sa mga sa mga lockdown na ito. I think that the least that a supplier can do, especially because there are services involved here, is to be able to show that you are a call away, you're an email away, you are a text away. You are able to show that you are responsive to the concerns. Ganon.
Thank you, Asek and Director Mel. For our ninth question, what if the supplier offered options to the client, such as change of date with waived services and or downgrade of packages, but the client does not consider these arrangements and insisted to still get a refund? Director Mel?
So the offer is not among the options as provided by under the memorandum circular. So sabi nga ni ASEC, the parties are free to renegotiate, to come up with new terms and conditions doon sa mga sa contract nila. So kung willing naman yung client, 'di ba? Halimbawa, in-offer yung supplier na in lieu of yung sa consuming the advance payments or refund, halimbawa, instead of using the bigger room, a venue, you can use this smaller room, ganun. At mag-agree naman yung kabilang party, so okay lang, walang problem lang. Thank you.
Asek, Ann, you have anything to add po?
No, I mean, I think that is really the gist of it. But pag napag-usapan nila, because the MC, as I said earlier, we cannot think of all possible configurations. These three options are what we think are what is needed at this time. So if the supplier and the client are able to you know mutually agree on other arrangements, pwede yan. But the supplier cannot insist dun sa change of date with waive services or downgrade if the client has already chosen an option that is available under the guidelines.
There is a follow-up question here from MC Estrada. Can the venue supplier insist not to refund the down payment made because service charges were incurred just by locking the date? Service charge po yung question, Asek.
Service charge was incurred for blocking the date.
Yes.
I think in this particular situation, you have a supplier that is not the event's place owner. So the supplier has secured the venue for that event, the way I understand it, and that 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 venue was secured because a fee was a service fee was incurred. Ang masasabi ko lang, yung event place owner covered din dito sa MC. So sana yung service fee na yan to just reserve a place, ibalik mo din if the client cancels the event, wala din namang even if you had that event, you have that venue, it could not have been used during this quarantine. So while you incurring expenses, it's not because you were prejudiced by that particular client. So that should be covered by a refund.
Good morning, ASEC. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I'm the one who asked the question. It's actually an email that came from the AE of the venue.
Of the venue, right?
Yes. So
Mm-mm.
we can say that we can demand payment, a refund.
I mean, because if you look at the circular, it says the payment was made for the venue. It could be related to, the payment could cover food or other services like transportation, but it also covers yung for the venue. So really, it is part of it is within the scope of the circular. In this case, ang makikita ko lang, I think that you have a different, it's not a one contract where your supplier is handling everything, but you have a venue na binayaran ng supplier, di ba? So, something like that.
We're direct po with them. So parang ang transaction pa lang namin with them is just to secure the place.
Yes, so, yeah, dapat mabalik yun. That is part, yes, that is part of the refund concession because that is rent for the venue.
Follow up po if I may. Kasi the contract po has two provisions regarding cancellation. The one is yun nga po yung just cancellation which we can demand for a 50% down payment. The other one, their provision is cancellation for natural calamity or national state of emergency, which is I think will fall for force majeure. Which should be applicable po ba?
I mean, ang sinasabi natin, the contract with its provisions, yun yung mag-a-apply sa parties. If there is a provision on non-refundable deposits, that will apply. Yun na yung sinabi natin kanina. Kaya natin nilalagay yung act of goodwill is kahit may kontrata, sana i-consider na dahil hindi naman talaga pwedeng i-hold yung event ngayon, ibalik na lang. Although we acknowledge that there may be a contract. So, in this case, you have the provision on no refund. You also have a provision on parang natural calamity. I do not consider this a natural calamity. That's why I said kanina na yung force majeure, usually yun yung natural calamity. It's more really like a fortuitous event, although that's even the Supreme Court uses the terms interchangeably. But more a fortuitous event na we have no control. Nobody has any control over. So, doon sa provision na it is due to a natural calamity, this is not a natural calamity, but then the contract also provides for no refund. So, the contract will prevail, but babalik na naman ako sa act of goodwill.
Thank you.
Thank you, ASEC and Director Mel for that. So for our last question, dito po sa sinend ng audience, what is the process of the DTI for filing formal complaints? How long should the refund be processed? I think Ms. Werlin is already here. Please answer this question po. Ms. Werl? Okay, if Ms. Werlin...
Yes.
Please,
Okay.
Ms. Werlin.
I'm back. Okay. Hello. Yes, this question presupposes that the refund concession procedures had been observed na nagkaroon na ng notification ang party sa supplier or sa event organizer na mapupostpone or na magka-cancel rather ang event. So kung despite such notification, wala namang naging agreement, pwede na siya ngayon mag-file ng complaint kung dito sa NCR at DTI FTEB. And depende sa rules on venue, kung nasa probinsya, pwede sa kung saan located yung complainant or the respondent or where the transaction took place. So depende dun sa complainant kung saan siya mag-file. So dito sa NCR, considering, meron tayo, itong rules natin, governed by Department Administrative Order 20-02. So meron tayong revised rules on mediation and adjudication. Yun, filing lang ng initial complaint. No need na notarize. So, dapat complete details. So, nandun yung narration ng facts. Mas maganda, kompleto na yung proof of transaction. And lahat ng evidence supporting the complaint dapat naka-attach na. Then, ang most importantly, dapat yung address of the phone number of the respondent, of the party complained of. And tayo kasi may modes of filing complaints. So, pwedeng written, pwedeng through electronic mail or snail mail. However, due to the state of health emergency, where yung health natin is very important and meron tayong dapat i-comply na social distancing measure. So, ang DTI, kami dito sa FTEB, nagkaroon kami ng advisory na, well, we will accept the walk-in complaints, but we strongly encourage that parties should file their complaint at through electronic mail. Meron kaming email address which is consumercare@dti.gov.ph or at ftebmediation.gov.ph. So yung mga provinces, may kanya-kanya rin po silang respective email addresses wherein yung party could file the complaint. So as soon as ma-receive naman namin ang complaint, we immediately issue notice to the party complained of. Na para naman magkaroon ng opportunity na even hindi muna mag-undergo ng mediation, baka mag-reply agad yung party complained of. So kung despite that effort, wala talaga, usually dito sa NCR, we only give 2 days. Kung wala talagang action on part of the respondent, isiset na namin yon sa notice sa virtual conference. Kaya we highly encouraged na ang party provide the email address of the party complained of or even the phone number kasi telemediation pwede rin naman tinatawagan para ipadala natin yung notice of mediation. Sa virtual conference din po tayo ngayon. Isi-send ang link. So yung notice of mediation, dapat may issue po agad after yung 2-day period na binibigay namin. And before the end of the 7-day period, dapat meron na kaming notice of mediation. Then, how long should the refund be processed? Of course, it's process na kasi yung kino-question na dyan eh. But the mediation proceeding itself, dapat within the 7-day period, tapos yung mediation proceeding. Ibig sabihin, natawag na yung attention ng parties and good kung nagkaroon ng settlement during the conference. But if not, sa ating rules, revised rules, extendable naman yan ng another 10-day period. Pwede pa rin silang mag-request for another mediation. And kung mag-a-agree yung both parties, kung despite the effort, wala talagang agreement, ang gagawin na ngayon po ng DTI is to issue a certificate to file action. Ito pong certificate to file action, it's a requirement po yan para kung walang settlement, mag-file na lang, i-advise naman yung party na nag-complain. So, kung gusto niya, willing siya, i-proceed na lang to sa adjudication para doon na lang mag-determine sa adjudication officer.
I love you,
Meron ba talagang
Nononi.
violation? Talagang merong violation committed or kung talagang required na i-refund niya ang the amount requested. So, depende ngayon yun. Upon the issuance sa CFA, nagbibigay na rin kami dito po sa NCR. We provide advisory for adjudication kasi po online na rin ang process ngayon ng adjudication. Submission of pleading, submission is through email na rin po. So, itong how long should the refund be processed? Ito po, depende kung mag-a-agree yung parties. So, that would depend upon the agreement na ng parties. Kung during the mediation conference, meron silang agreement na okay, isi-settle na namin. Of course, the terms and conditions of the agreement will prevail. But as kung hindi po siya na-settle at matutuloy yan sa adjudication, meron din po tayong processing period for adjudication and that would be provided as soon as ma-issue po ang certificate to file action. And filing po ng complaints sa adjudication is through electronic mail na rin at fteb_adjudication@dti.gov.ph. That's for NCR, FTEB po. But for the provincial offices, i-advise din naman po kung saan nila pwedeng i-file yun for adjudication.
Thank you, Ms. Whirl. It's already 12:12. ASEC, Director Mel, and Ms. Whirl, can we extend up to 12:30 perhaps? So we can answer more questions. Siguro we can answer 3 questions from the chat and then we will entertain 5 audience para po masagot yung questions nila. So first question from the chat box. This is from Kakaywi. So Kakaywi is representing Grand Astoria Hotel and Astoria Regency located in Zamboanga City. We have several guests demanding for refund, even if their events are still in October. They are dragging the name of DTI and that they will sue us. What protection can our establishment have against these threats? ASEC Ann po.
Alam nyo, that's why we always advert to that golden rule, no? Kasi it's also unfair and it's both sides should be responsible enough. Kasi ang nangyayari dyan, if there are threats, that is not a good indication. I think it will be on the part of the hotel. It would be good to also really make an assessment of where it came from. Could it be because there have been concerns that were not they were not addressed readily? that prompted these clients to suddenly be more aggressive, or are the clients really just very aggressive people? So on the part of the business, I would recommend that the business make an assessment of where those complaints are coming from, and then um if they are really just um yung very aggressive clients na wala namang kayong pagkukulang, doon na din ang papasok ang goodwill. I think that being an established hotel with a name, I think you can stand your ground, because when people go through litigation, kami ni Attorney Mel, we're lawyers. We have lawyers from FTEB here. Yusek Ruth is a lawyer. It is not an easy process. It is very easy to say, kakasuhan ko kayo. But to go through an adversarial proceeding requires so much, not only of time, not only of expenses, but really the whole range of emotions, because it's adversarial. So as long as you have responded to the legitimate concerns of your clients, you have exerted a high level of customer care, I think you can, let go of all that noise and just do the kind of service that you do.